on anvil rang through the workshop, a sharp, metallic rhythm echoing off the stone walls. Sparks flew with every strike, painting the dimly lit room in orange and gold. But this was no ordinary smithy. Within its walls stood a young man whose hands could craft not only gold and silver, but the hearts of kings and peasants alike. Every coin, every ornate chalice, every delicate crown that passed through his fingers bore not just skill, but the blessing of God. This was Eligius, a boy born of humble origins in the rolling hills of what would one day be France. Even as a child, he carried the quiet authority of someone destined for greatness. While other boys wrestled in the mud or chased after animals, Eligius watched, listened, and learned. He listened to the hum of the forge, to the whispers of travelers who spoke of saints and miracles, to the prayers of the poor who begged for mercy. It was said that the moment Eligius laid hands on molten metal, it obeyed him as if alive. Coins he struck were perfectly round. Jewels set themselves in their filigree, and the faint scent of incense seemed to rise from the silver he polished. People began to whisper, this boy was touched by heaven. And yet, for all his skill, his heart was never captivated by wealth. Where others saw profit, Eligius saw opportunity to heal, to feed, to clothe, to save. One day, a merchant arrived with a purse of gold too heavy for ordinary hands. The man scoffed at Eligius's youth. "Can you fashion this into a crown for the king's daughter?" he demanded, disbelief in his voice. Eligius nodded quietly, wiping his palms on his apron. Hours passed. The merchant dozed in the corner, certain the boy would fail. Then, with the last strike of his hammer, Eligius held up a crown so magnificent that it seemed to glow. Not just from the gold, but from the presence of something unseen, something divine. It wasn't just craftsmanship. When Eligius touched the crown, it carried a blessing. A sick child who had visited the workshop moments before felt a warmth in her chest, and the color returned to her cheeks. A poor widow, whose coins had been weighed by crooked merchants, found her debts mysteriously canceled. And all the while, Eligius spoke little, smiled humbly, and prayed silently, as if he understood that true greatness was measured not by wealth, but by the lives one could touch. The whispers spread, growing louder with every miracle, every act of generosity. Kings and nobles took notice. Priests and bishops watched in awe. And yet, for all the attention, Eligius remained a man of the people, walking barefoot along muddy roads to comfort the poor, sharing bread with the hungry, blessing the sick with a touch so gentle it left a lasting warmth in their souls. But with greatness came challenge. Envy lurked in the corridors of power, and not every eye saw the good in Eligius. There were those who plotted, who whispered that such miracles could not be of God. And yet, Eligius's faith did not waver. He faced each trial as he faced his work at the forge, with precision, patience, and unwavering trust in a higher purpose. This is the story of Saint Eligius, the boy who would become a man who forged miracles with his hands, softened hearts with his prayers, and transformed the world not with weapons or armies, but with faith, skill, and an unshakable devotion to God. Before he became a saint, before kings knelt before him, before miracles were written in history books, he was a child, a boy whose eyes saw possibilities where others saw nothing, whose hands trembled yet held divine purpose, and whose heart beat with a rhythm that would one day echo through centuries. Eligius was born in the early 7th century in a modest village near Limoges, in what is now France. His parents were humble artisans themselves, teaching him the value of hard work, honesty, and kindness. From the earliest age, Eligius showed an unusual attentiveness. While other children raced through the fields, he would pause to watch the blacksmiths, to admire the way light danced on metal, to observe the rhythm of labor and life itself. Even as a boy, his hands seemed guided by an unseen force. A simple copper coin, placed between his fingers, would shine brighter than any in the village chest. A rough iron tool, clumsily shaped, would become smooth and perfect with a touch. Neighbors began to notice. One winter, a farmer's horse had broken a shoe and could not walk. The farmer despaired, knowing he could not afford a new horse. Young Eligius offered to help. With simple tools, patience, and prayer, he repaired the shoe, and the horse not only walked, but ran with renewed strength. The villagers gasped. The boy had touched more than iron. He had touched life itself. Another time, a sick child lay in a straw bed, fever scorching his face. Eligius knelt beside him, pressed a small silver charm into the boy's hand, and whispered a prayer. By morning, the child's fever had broken, and color returned to his cheeks. His parents, stunned, fell to their knees, calling the boy blessed. But Eligius never sought glory. He continued to work beside his father, learning the trade of goldsmithing, hammering, melting, and shaping precious metals. And all the while, he carried a quiet fire within, a yearning to serve God, to use every skill, every ounce of his energy, to make the world better. As he grew, his talents became undeniable. By the time he was a young man, he was crafting jewelry and religious items that seemed to carry a light of their own. Nobles came to his workshop not just for gold, but to witness the boy who could turn molten metal into beauty and miracles alike. By the time Eligius reached his early 20s, his reputation had spread far beyond his small village. His hands, already skilled beyond measure, now seemed guided by divine inspiration. Not only could he shape gold and silver into intricate crowns, chalices, and jewelry, but each creation seemed to carry a blessing. One winter, a wealthy noble commissioned Eligius to craft a golden reliquary for a local church. The boyish humility of the young artisan made the noble skeptical. "Can you truly make something worthy of God?" he asked, his tone dripping with doubt. Eligius only smiled quietly and worked hour after hour, his hammer ringing like a sacred chant in the empty workshop. By nightfall, the reliquary was complete. Delicate filigree, tiny angels carved into the gold, and precious stones arranged as if by divine symmetry. When the noble returned, his eyes widened. But the miracle was not in the gold. That night, a blind girl from the village knelt before the reliquary and wept with joy. Her sight returned. The villagers whispered in awe, "Eligius's hands are touched by heaven." Even as he worked for kings and nobles, Eligius's heart remained with the poor. On market days, he would wander through streets filled with mud and smoke, quietly leaving small gifts of silver or coins for struggling families. If a child was sick, he would pause, kneel beside the straw bed, and place a gentle hand on the fevered forehead, whispering a prayer that seemed to draw warmth and life into the suffering body. One of his most famous acts of mercy occurred when a village blacksmith's workshop caught fire. Flames licked the wooden beams, and villagers screamed, fearing the spread. Eligius did not panic. He waded into the smoke, carried children to safety, and even pulled molten iron from the forge, shaping it into tools for the blacksmith before it cooled. Tools that would last decades. Witnesses claimed the fire never burned his hands, leaving the boy standing unharmed, calm as if the flames recognized him as a servant of God. His acts of faith were not limited to healing or saving lives. Eligius also confronted injustice. Merchants who cheated peasants found their fraudulent scales mysteriously unbalanced after passing through his workshop. Taxes were sometimes mysteriously reduced for the poor after Eligius had quietly prayed over the ledgers. Nobles began to see him as a man who could not be bribed, who valued righteousness above wealth, and who wielded his divine gifts for the good of all. Of course, not everyone admired Eligius. Some envied his skill and holiness, whispering that a mortal could not command miracles. Others saw his generosity as a threat to their authority or wealth. Yet Eligius faced each challenge with patience and prayer. He would calmly meet with angry merchants or skeptical nobles, his eyes gentle but unwavering, his voice calm yet persuasive. One particularly tense day, a wealthy duke demanded that Eligius craft a crown imbued with extraordinary riches. "If you fail, you will face punishment," the duke threatened. Eligius simply nodded, not out of fear, but with the serene confidence of one who knew God's protection. Hours passed, the hammer rang, sparks flew, and when the crown was complete, the duke gasped, not just at the beauty, but at the faint, radiant glow surrounding it, as though the gold itself carried a blessing. The noble knelt in awe, muttering prayers of his own. Eligius's ability to face opposition calmly became his hallmark. He did not argue or fight. Instead, he let his faith, skill, and compassion speak for him. Each miracle, each act of mercy, each perfectly crafted item became a testament to a life entirely devoted to God. As Eligius grew older, his reputation reached the ears of kings. He became a trusted advisor, not only for his craftsmanship, but for his wisdom. He advised on charitable works, oversaw church constructions, and continued to minister quietly to the poor and sick. His hands, once small and trembling as a child, now shaped both gold and the lives of those around him with a steady, deliberate grace. Eligius's life was a continual balance of service, prayer, and miracles. He founded hospitals, cared for orphans, and established schools for the poor. No request was too small, no suffering too trivial. And even in his old age, miracles followed him. Blind eyes opened, the sick healed, troubled hearts comforted, and hope restored to the hopeless. When he finally passed into eternal life in the 7th century, the people mourned deeply, but they also celebrated. Kings, nobles, and peasants alike remembered him not just as a master goldsmith, but as a man whose hands shaped the world for God's glory. Today, Saint Eligius is remembered as the patron saint of goldsmiths, metalworkers, coin collectors, and all artisans. His legacy lives on as a model of faith, humility, generosity, and unwavering service to God and humanity.